So I'm really happy to kick off this panel discussion here today. We're going to talk about thriving together and how we can help each other succeed, as Serena said. So I'm Cybulski. I'm the corporate controller for ATS, and over my nearly 25-year career, not quite yet, with 15 years of those at ATS, I've really honestly had the privilege of being supported by several mentors and coaches that have helped to set me up for success, and I hope that through the mentorship program and other means that I've been able to achieve some of that for others as well along their journeys. So today I'm very pleased to have three members of ATS's board of directors with us, Joanne Ferstman, Kirsten Lange, and Sharon for this panel discussion, and they've generously agreed to share their own stories of leadership and mentorship with us today. So before we get into any questions, I thought I'd like to ask each of them to take a moment to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about their own career journeys. So I'll start with Joanne.
Thank you, Anne. Hi everyone, I'm Joanne. I've been on the ATS board since 2018, and I currently chair the audit committee, and I'm a member of the HR and compensation committee. I'll start by saying I'm thrilled to be here, and when I look around, I see a culture and a community that's helping employees feel confident and supported in their career journeys, and I'm really proud to be a part of that community. I'll tell you a little bit about myself and my career. I'm a CPA by background, so also accounting and finance. And this may seem odd, but I really only had one job my entire career through a variety of circumstances, including mostly good luck and being in the right place at the right time. I started working at an accounting firm, and from there I joined a client that I was very close to and became the CFO there. That company ultimately got acquired by a much larger company. I became a CFO for that larger company and had a variety of executive and board jobs through that company, including being CEO of one of their operating divisions. I actually retired from my executive career in 2012 when that company was sold to one of the Canadian banks. But looking back, and I know we'll talk about this more in our question period, I think the major factor that helped me in my career path was more senior people that I worked with, really encouraging me to take on new challenges and new roles, many of which I probably would have felt that I lacked experience in or wasn't ready for at the time. Since 2012, I've pursued a career as a corporate director. So what I do here at ATS is sit on the board. I do for a number of other public companies, private entities, and nonprofits. And the board work is rewarding in a very different way. It allows me to work with very interesting colleagues like Sharon and Kirsten here, great management teams like the one here at ATS, and be involved in helping run a company in a different way, not like totally hands-on, but more giving advice to the CEO and the management team and working on more strategic decisions, major milestones, and creating value for all the stakeholders. A lot of the work I do as a director is as chair of the audit committee, and it's always very special for me to work with CFOs and the entire finance team in a mentor capacity. I do feel I have a lot of empathy for the challenges and complexities of that role, given my own background as CFO. On a personal note, I have 5 children, all in various stages of their career, so I am a full-time mentor in my personal life as well. But they get my advice whether they ask for it or not. So I'm really looking forward to our discussion and your questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Joanne. Kirsten?
All right, let me continue. My name is Kirsten. I'm German and I live in Germany, although I've also lived in many other countries, including China and the United States and France, etc. I have a very unusual career. I'm a journalist by education with minors in philosophy and sociology, and then entered management consulting with BCG, Boston Consulting Group, where I stayed for 22 very, very long years and very intense years. But already at that time, I was very aware of, let's call it women's issues, although I hated to call them women's issues. We had a very active women's initiative network, which I was also heading globally. But in the course of my engagement for this network, I discovered it's not necessarily only about women, and that's why I'm very happy, by the way, that our network is not exclusive of men. For me, it turned out to be more important for people, particularly in consulting, who wanted to pursue some different career paths. Because one observation I've made, women, everything is fine, and kind of they have great degrees from university, everything is fine, until they get kids. That is usually a typical breaking point. So my interest was always more in kind of how can you support kind of careers beyond those breaking points. And that is true not only for women, but also for men, particularly the more modern men who also want to get involved with their families and everything. So I was at BCG for 22 years and then decided I wanted to see the real world, because it was really strange to see as a consultant kind of advising CEOs and corporations at a really high level how little you really know about the realities of a corporate life. So I then joined a company, a large engineering company based in Germany, where I was the chief development officer. I was dealing with service and automation and all kind of digital business models. I was doing that for 5 years, then joined a significantly smaller company where I was the CEO, which was also an excellent experience, and I'd always prefer a small company and being the one on the top compared to a larger company being one of many. But then, similar to Joanne, I decided to focus on a non-executive career, frankly, because there were so many things I was always interested in. And I'm now kind of a professional non-executive director for altogether 5 different companies. I've been with ATS now since 2017. I'm a member of the audit committee, which Joanne perfectly chairs, and I'm chairing our sustainability committee, which we founded 1.5 years ago, approximately. And as I said before, women or kind of networks and supporting the professional growth has always been at my heart. I've been a mentor for women from within my companies I work, but also from other companies for the last, 25 years now, which is always interesting. And I love being in touch, kind of particularly now with younger women, to see what has changed or what has not changed, what are some of the issues that we are still struggling with. I have also founded a quite successful network of BCG alumni who are now working in all kind of different industries, which is incredibly rewarding. I love it. I'm also teaching at 2 business schools in France and in Switzerland, which is also terribly exciting because I get in touch again with young people, which is really great. And so I'm happy to be here. And I'm really, really happy also to provide a little bit the international perspective, because ATS is a very global company. I can tell you it feels very different when you're in Europe compared to when you're here in Cambridge. So I look really forward to our discussion today.
Great, thanks, Kirsten. Sharon.
Okay, I'm Sharon Pell, and I am the newest board member at ATS. I've been on the board for about 1.5 years, and really excited to be here. I feel, very excited to be here this week because, of course, it's International Women's Day on March the 8th, and I like the focus that brings on women and women in business in particular. So a little bit about me is I am a lawyer by training. I think I probably went to law school before most of you were born. And I was at Torrey's, a business law firm, from 1982 to 2003, where I was an associate. I was an articling student, then an associate, and then a partner. So I progressed through the ranks. In 2003, after a long association with one client, I left the firm and became the general counsel at TMX Group, which is the holding company for the Toronto Stock Exchange, the TSX Venture Exchange, the Derivatives Exchange, etc. So fantastic opportunity to really be involved in the business side of the world. And my scope was well beyond just being the lawyer and the head lawyer in the group, but I had significant oversight responsibilities for legal and regulatory matters, advising the board, which was very rewarding and very interesting. And so I did that for 12 years. until 2015 when I decided it was time for another chapter in my life, and I stopped working full-time and took on a number of board roles. So I've done a number of different public, private, not-for-profit boards since then. I've always been interested in connecting people, promoting people, and mentoring and sponsoring people. And so I've been very lucky to have a number of fantastic mentors and sponsors over my lifetime. And I really, really enjoy mentoring and connecting people. And like you, Kirsten, I have to say that I really enjoy the engagement with the younger generation as well. And not just women, but lots of men. And I spend a lot of time talking to people at all ages. I have to say, since I've been on the ATS board, I love our people, process, and performance, and I love that people is the first aspect. But I have to say, as a new board member, you're sort of walking in cold to an environment where you don't know people. And, I've been very supported by everyone on the board, but Joanne and Kirsten in particular. So I am a member of the Sustainability Committee, which is ably chaired by Kirsten, and I'm the chair of the Governance Committee.
Great, thanks for that. This is nice for me too, because normally on a quarterly basis, I'm presenting the financial statements to these fine women. So this is another of my passions, talking about how we support each other. So I'm really looking forward to getting into a little bit more of a few more questions for them in a couple of moments. Before we do that, I want to start by acknowledging how much is happening in the world around us right now. Economically, politically, and then of course professionally and personally for each of us. We all have something going on individually, but there's lots going on around us that can seem, I use this word, noisy, right? It can seem noisy. And so we know we're operating in a very fluid environment, but we don't always have all the answers, right? But we have each other to draw on for support. And one thing that I'm very proud of is that within ATS, and you heard our board members speak about it, we are all centered on a common goal, which is around our core values of people, process, and performance. And people is first for a reason, as many of you will have heard Andrew and others say many times. And we are a global company, over 7,500 people in all parts of the world. And we, again, consistently have focused on aspiring to have the best team and winning as a team. And that's what's going to be always important to us and will continue to remain important no matter what's going on in the world around us. So I wanted to start there. And our goal really continues to be to embrace uniqueness and belonging. And that's a theme that I think will remain consistent, because that allows us to drive innovation, right? We really believe that innovation doesn't come from sameness. And so diversity of thought and perspectives, which is what we're doing here, sharing our experiences, is really essential to our success as a business. So I think I wanted to start there, just given that there is so much happening around us, and just as an anchor point for our discussion here today. So on that theme of uniqueness and belonging, I want to start with a question to each of our panelists, given what I've said about the dynamic environment we're operating in. How do each of you see uniqueness and belonging in action at ATS in this context? Kirsten, maybe I'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, thanks, Anne. Well, obviously, we are an international company, and how things are being done or looked upon in Europe can be very different from other regions of the world. And I think that's natural, because that also is an aspect of the diversity. And I think actually that's a strength of ATS, that we are being a truly global company. So let's keep that in mind first. I think the second thing which I see is that ATS has a very strong values orientation, and I think Anne and Sharon have mentioned kind of people being at the first of our people, process, performance. And this is what I really see, and I can just say for myself and for the board that it's deeply ingrained, this belief in us that we are nothing with our people. And I can tell you this has changed a lot in many companies over the years. The topic has gained significant importance in different companies, but I think now even for a engineering and manufacturing company as we are. Obviously, it's different in professional services where you just have people, you don't have anything else. We have great technology, great products, but I think there's also deeply ingrained belief, at least in the board, that our people are absolutely core to us, and this feeling or this principle of uniqueness and belonging, that is so important. So for me personally, I think this is a very, very strong belief. It's not only communication and everything, it's a very strong belief within ATS. And so I don't see any reason to be concerned or any changes or whatsoever. Obviously, kind of the political environment, particularly in North America, looks different than it looked a year ago or so. But my belief is that it's so deeply ingrained by now in the ATS culture that I see this continuing as it has in the past. Let me maybe give you one example which I found also unique for us as a board to operate. And I've met a couple of you at previous occasions when we have board meetings, and we try to make our board meetings at different locations around the world and always try to use the opportunity to meet with people. And this is always so great. Unfortunately, we never have enough time, but when we have lunches, we always have the opportunity to meet a few people within the organization, and obviously this day for us is another opportunity. But I think this is for me one thing which I found very special to ATS and which I have not seen in my other boards, that we put so much focus also as board members to meet as many of the people as possible, and not in some kind of highly staged town halls where you're only allowed to say this or that, but really in some smaller incidents. And I also look forward that we have the opportunity today, not only in this panel, but also later over lunch or so. So I'm happy for any further discussions, but I have a very strong belief about this and see this very much reflected in ATS.
Thanks, Kirsten. Yeah, and Joanne, do you want to add anything to the
First of all, I totally agree with everything Kirsten said, and those lunch meetings are so important for board members as well. We never get really the opportunity to meet the entire employee group, and it's a very nice opportunity to hear from different people throughout the organization of what it's like to work at ATS. And in my early days, my first year on the board in 2018, a couple of months later, we went to Germany. It was my first trip, and I was just blown away. The nicest thing I've heard from employees is there seems to be a lot of people that have worked here for many, many years, and their career, ATS has provided them an opportunity to grow their careers here. Instead of saying, oh, my job's not working for me, I'm gonna go look somewhere else, that ATS has done a great job in making sure that there's a career paths for employees here. So I met people that have been in for 20 years in 3 different parts of the organization, and I love hearing that. But for me, when I was asked to give an example of what I thought was special about ATS, I think something that demonstrates our uniqueness and belonging is our focus on ABM. And that's something, again, that I really think the focus here is different than I've ever seen at some other companies. And I loved hearing at our last update meeting that we had 985 ABM boot camp graduates in fiscal 2024, which was more than the previous 5 years combined. I just thought that's such a huge achievement and demonstrates how eager the employee group is in getting involved in something so important and such an important initiative. And I look at the ABM and the fact that working together as a team and the employee groups working together as a team just really fosters an inclusiveness and belonging, focuses us on employees on a common goal, creating efficiencies and just finding solutions that are going to benefit our customers and our company and our shareholders for the long term. So that would be my one kind of example.
It's so great to hear that you can pull in the ABM, because as those who are on my team know that culture of continuous improvement is really what draws out the best in people and gives them an opportunity to bring their best selves to work. So it's great. Sharon?
And I was going to talk about innovation, and innovation is a core tenet in this organization. It's very exciting. And I think really in order to have the employee population be in a place where they're thinking about innovation and actually innovating, they have to be able to bring their best selves to work. And that's where uniqueness and belonging is a core part of getting the best out of everyone who comes to work every day.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that is why people is the first tenet in our culture and our strategy, and is a critical part of what we do. And you listen to the three of our backgrounds, and we all have completely different backgrounds, and we have completely different perspectives as a result of that. And so that's true of everybody in this room. We all have a journey, and collaborating and innovating is the way to business success for ATS.
Yeah, and I mean, we've seen that as the ABM has continued to develop over the years. And so it's great to hear that from all of you. So, okay, let's move on to some additional questions, and really want to get into some examples that maybe you've seen over your career of how can we help advocate, how can we help each other succeed. So Joanne, why don't I start with you, and just if you have an example or something that's happened that you've seen where somebody's really made a lasting impact. You talked about that a little bit in your opening comments.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, in that I was really talking about mentorship and how that impacted me, but I do have kind of an example of something I was involved with back in 2014 on one of my boards. The CEO, at that time there was kind of a focus that there weren't enough women on boards, and the statistics were that only 11% of board jobs were held by women in all of Canada. And the number was pretty, very, very low, and there was no real rhyme or reason of why that was the case. And the CEO of one of my companies had actually made a very bold move and decided that he was going to have our board have over 50% women. And it was the first company in Canada that decided to do something like that. And I was on the board already, and I was really proud to be part of that journey. But because I was there already, my role was to mentor and train the new women board members that were joining the board. And some of them were, joining boards for the first time. Some of them were much younger and are at different stages of their careers, so they needed kind of like, a whole training process. And I really thought that made a lasting impact, not only on the company and setting the tone from the top, but kind of messages, the tone from the top on these, how to do things right really goes a long way. And I mean, the company, there was a lot of like external goodwill, internal goodwill, and the employees in that organization really saw that this push was doing something different and something positive. And just for like a note, 10 years later, where are the numbers for women on boards? Right now, that 11% is now 29%, but the better statistics is that over 90% of all companies have at least one woman board member today. So been dramatic improvements in that area.
Yeah, no, that's great to hear. And I think if I think about the example that you shared about supporting each other, that's really what you're getting at is if there's a need and you sort of notice that we need to develop a program or something to bring people into the fold, then that's how we continually improve upon ourselves and on our companies. So thank you for that.
Just because that somebody hasn't been a board member before doesn't mean they can't be a great board member with some help and training.
Mm-hmm. I can tell you, in many of my roles, there were some things that I definitely hadn't done before, right? And it just takes a little bit of patience and coaching and a bit of time, and eventually kind of you get there. So, Sharon, the question I have for you is, if you think about somebody advocating for you, that's lovely, that's great, it's nice when it happens. But have you ever had to advocate for yourself? And how did you do that? And maybe give some advice to those in the audience about how they could do that in a constructive way.
I think advocating for yourself is hard. Most people lots of people don't really like to talk about their achievements, or you just are busy with your head down, doing your work, and you don't really record all of your achievements. So I think that if you need to advocate for yourself, have a plan, think about what it is you're trying to achieve. If you're going to go into a meeting where you're talking to your boss about, I don't know, compensation or wanting a promotion or whatever, you know, write some notes, because you'll probably be a bit nervous. Think about your key points. But I think, you know, you already have some fantastic programs in place here. I was thinking about your individual development plans and some of the programs that you have that lots of us didn't have growing up, in terms of, you know, planning for your career, thinking strategically about where you want to go, thinking about moving into a different area so that you gain new experience. Those are all things that I think, you know, your individual development programs and HR can help you with a number of those conversations, as well as you're advocating for yourself.
Mm-hmm. And those take work, right? And
yes.
on both the part of ourselves and our managers. We actually had a corporate finance town hall event last week here in Cambridge, and we had a really good discussion on that, you know, the conversations that need to be had as part of an individual development plan, right? It could mean that you assess what you want and you're perfectly happy where you are, but you still, the base level of ABM, continuous improvement approach kind of is still layered underneath of all that. But that's a great example of one of the things we do here to help with those conversations.
Yeah, and it's hard to think about or to assess your own strengths and weaknesses, mm-hmm. and to really develop your own personal strategy.
Yeah.
And so having conversations with your boss or some of your colleagues, or even your family members, your friends, is helpful in terms of planning for your career and what advocacy you have to do in order to get what you want.
Yeah, for sure. And I think there's probably another person you could speak with, which would be a mentor, somebody that you've relied on, mm-hmm. You know, for perspective. And when we run our mentorship program, we often hear this theme of perspective and just learning from others. So, Kirsten, maybe speak a little bit about, you know, what mentors you've had. What do they do for you? How did they become your mentor? How do you start those conversations? We have a formal program here, obviously, with good training and, you know, but maybe talk about what's worked for you.
Well, unfortunately, I did not have a formal mentor because there were no mentoring programs. And even if there had been, I'm sure they had no idea what to do with me because I was always so different. So it was up to me basically to get some advice from people that I wanted to get advice from, and there were almost no other women. There were no other women senior to myself, so I was also lacking role models. And it was basically my responsibility. And I think this is a good lesson, kind of, even if you have great kind of formal mentoring programs, it's your responsibility. So go and get advice. And that was actually the first difficult thing for me. I was always horrible in asking for feedback. Obviously, in consulting, you have this very formalized feedback every 3 months or so, but sometimes you also have to ask for more feedback. And I was always really, and I still am today, really weak in asking for feedback. I'm only good when I know that the feedback is going to be great, which is not exactly the purpose for asking for feedback. But I think you got to learn that. And I think that was one key lesson for me, start asking for feedback. Informal feedback, lots of feedback, but then the second lesson also, evaluate this kind of feedback. And I think this is also when you have a mentor, also evaluate the advice you get from the mentor. And I've always had a good experience with accepting those pieces I wanted to accept and then neglecting the other pieces I didn't want to accept, because not necessarily in a mentoring relationship, but in any kind of relationship, there's also a motivation from somebody who gives you this feedback. So I always said it's good, but I don't accept every feedback. And this doesn't mean that I'm resistant to feedback, but I'm very careful in evaluating who is saying what to me and why, particularly if it's unsolicited feedback. So that was the second thing. A third lesson which I learned, which had been an incredibly hard one, and I'll tell you the story behind that, is to get a little bit of a thicker skin. I remember I was just elected partner. I was pregnant with my first son, and we had in consulting again in BCG this upward and lateral feedback. So basically everybody in the entire company was invited to provide you feedback, anonymous feedback, which they have changed since then. And the feedback I've gotten while I was pregnant, and I worked almost until the day of giving birth, has been so unfair. It was really kind of, Kirsten is not dedicated anymore. She's trying to switch off her responsibilities and hand it to others. It was totally unfair. This was one of the feedback I did not accept. And I had a very good male colleague, or actually boss of mine, whom I had developed a good relationship with. And then I called him, and I could only call him because I had this good relationship with him. I said, what do I do with this feedback? And he basically said, you gotta get a thick skin, neglect it if it's not important. And then I told him, but I want to improve, I want to learn, I want to develop further. And he said, think more about developing your strengths and working on your weaknesses. And that has been probably the single most important advice I have gotten. And I think everybody has a whole collection of strengths and weaknesses, but this advice, focus on your strengths, those things that make you unique, which you are really, really great at. Don't try to become average, but try to be kind of the personality you are. And that was not only much nicer to work on my strengths than on some of the weaknesses with whatever it is. It also really helped me, and I think this is an important lesson, probably even more for women than for men, because women are still the minority in most of the business situations, and it's still difficult to find your own positioning, because sometimes you still lack the role models, and particularly if you're working in a technology company such as ATS. And I think thinking more about who are the person that you want to be, who are the person that you can be, building on your strengths, rather than trying to be like everybody else and have the same profile like everybody else. I think this was an interesting piece of advice which helped me a lot. It might also be interesting food for thought for you guys.
Again, like different perspectives and different things work for different people. So maybe Joanne or Sharon, Joanne, you could go first if you have a story of mentorship or something you'd like to share on this topic. Would be great.
I want to add also that, because there was no formal mentorship programs, we chose informal mentors, which were either people that were, we felt it was easier to talk to or were open to talk to with us, whether it would be a boss that was advocating for us or whatnot. And, you want to have a mentor that you're close enough to, and you trust, you can open up to. For me, I had my first formal mentor about a decade ago. It was a CFO at one of my companies. It was her first role as a CFO. And I really wasn't sure how to be a mentor, other than to, help her become a better CFO, or, answer her questions with respect to, to the job. But we became very close, and she would call me with all types of personal questions about, she got pregnant and how to balance her time with her job, and then she wasn't getting along with the CEO at one time, and it was amazing because she became like a close personal friend through this mentorship relationship, and I'm still very close with her today. So I think the mentor relationship can be very, very rewarding, and it can create long-standing positive impact on your career and your life, both from the mentor and the mentee side.
Yeah, we find that as well. Like I act as a mentor in our program now, but also informally, and there's always good feedback from our mentors around exactly what you said. Just the things that you can learn, different perspectives both ways.
And not only about business.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And I would say, so, because I'm the oldest guy in the group here, I can tell you there were certainly no mentorship programs. There were very few women in the law firm. When I graduated from law school, 15% of my class were female, and now it's about 53%. But I would say mentors and sponsors show up organically very often, and that was my case. I was very lucky, And as you move out of having sort of the particular relationship that for the issue you might be wanting to solve, hang on to that person, man, woman, whatever. And because even though you might have changed jobs or gone to a different organization, they will still be your mentor and your sponsor if you've developed that relationship, and they'll want to continue to engage with you in whatever part of your life you're in.
Yeah, and formal or informal, like, I mean, we have this formal program now, but informal is perfectly fine and in some cases can work better. When we talk about the mentorship program, we sort of, I describe it as strengthening the fabric of the organization, and you can always, even if you've not maintained the formal connection, you can always go back to those people and get that perspective when you need it, so it's great. One thing one of you was touching on was really just how do you encourage people to take ownership, greater ownership, and take on more in different ways, whether it's advancing, or moving laterally within the organization, while maintaining healthy boundaries, right? So I have 2 kids, I try. Do I get it perfect all the time? No. But maybe speak about a little bit that, what could work for, there's lots of people in here, in this room, who have children or who have personal commitments outside of work, parents, aging parents, grandparents, family situations. What do you guide on there? Kirsten, maybe start with you.
Yeah, 2 things. One is, it's totally interesting to see the research about the behavior of men and women. Like when you have a job description with like 10 requirements, kind of men apply when they fulfill 5 of these requirements, and women apply when they fulfill 9.5 of these requirements. So I think the first, and this is research, and it has been established over and over again. So I think the first piece of advice that I would give you, be daring. Kind of be really daring, be ambitious, go for the next job, even if you think, okay, I cannot really fulfill that role. I've always been scared to death when I took over a new role. I always had the feeling I did not have everything that people would expect from me. I was just kind of showing off with some things. There was no substance. Kind of everybody does that. So go ahead. Secondly, the thing is, how do you balance that? And I think that's a tough question, particularly when you have either kids or some other family issues to deal with. And I had here one very interesting observation, that I always was able to finish the task on time, independent of whether I had until 6 p.m., 8 p.m., or whether I had said, well, the evening is off anyhow, kind of I have to do an all-nighter. Saying that you also adapt your work to the time that is available. So if you only have limited time because you have a really important appointment in the evening for whatever, kind of you are usually working much more focused and concentrated with 80-20 in mind, compared to when you have unlimited time, or think kind of, my husband is taking care of the kids tonight, so I can really do it really, really well. And this was an interesting lesson for me, that the time is always just sufficient. So I think it is quite important that you take time for your other commitments as well. And I'm not saying kind of you should not take the job seriously, no, contrary. But I think you can only be good if you have a balanced life. So I think your health is quite important, your personal relationships, your family, all of this is incredibly important. And I can only say, after having kids, I was a much better consultant because I was much better able to focus. So I think in order to be a real top performer at your job, you should be aware that the job is not everything, that there are other things in life who are as important as a job. And now if you have this perspective, there are other things, it usually helps you to get better in your job. So I'm a strong advocate of kind of saying no. I'm a strong advocate of reflection. By the way, this is what I see many people kind of doing too little of, really reflecting. I'm still at my advanced age kind of tracking down all the time at the end of the week. I'm really at every day kind of, I'm saying what worked well, what didn't work well, what were my lessons, what did I learn? And sometimes you don't see the forest for so many trees, but I think taking the active time for reflection, kind of for learning, for have I spent my resources wisely, that is quite important. So those were some of the lessons for me. How can you balance that?
Yeah, Joanne.
I would add to what Kirsten's saying. I agree with it 100%, but you can't, it's easy to feel that you're not good at everything. So, or you don't have time for everything, but you have to make time for de-stressing and whatever allows you to feel that you have a better work-life balance. And it's different for everybody. I mean, for some people, it may be, turning your phone off at 7 p.m. every night and just having a non-email free, night or weekend. For other people, they want to go for a run in the morning and make sure they get their 1 hour of exercise in. So you have to find your thing that makes it all work. And there is time for everything, and you can balance it, and you can be a mother and a partner and a daughter and a wife and a son and and an executive and have a very rewarding career. So.
Yeah, and I've seen lots of great examples in my team and people that I work with regularly of what that thing is,
Yeah.
right? And it is different for everyone, and that's perfectly
And the
fine.
company helps you with that. I mean, having a company with the same values, or puts employees first and understands that sometimes you need a chill day.
And let me maybe add to that, Joanne. I think you can be everything, but you cannot be perfect in everything all the time.
Yeah.
And it's perfectly okay, not to bake the cake yourself, but
Yeah.
to buy one. There are always some. And I did it so often that I bought it, but I decorated it, and I decorated it badly so that nobody would see I didn't bake it by myself.
And you're always harder on yourself.
Yeah.
You're always hard.
I have a funny story about a cake. Every time my kids have a birthday, I still have to make the cake, but it's because I like doing it, right? And
Yeah,
I could
that's one
make
of
a
your
different
things.
choice. I
Yeah.
actually have bought the cake once and decorated it, and it was fine. It was great, probably the best cake ever. But it's because I like doing it. It's one of my things. Every time, twice a year, my husband says, "Why are you doing that? Why are you spending time?" Because I like it, and it's just one of those things that allows me to chill, and the kids see that I'm spending time with them, and it's fun. So fun is important. Mm-hmm. Sharon, do you have anything to add?
Well, I was just gonna say that the boundaries are not static boundaries. So sometimes you're spending more time doing the working thing and less time with the family, and sometimes you need to spend more time with the family. And so you need to realize that, there are ebbs and flows, and you have to forgive yourself when you're not perfect at everything, as you said, because 100% you're not going to be.
Yeah. Speaking of forgiveness, sorry to any of you who've had to deal with my pictures of my kids' cakes. There's a lot of them. So we're kind of on this theme of different things work well for some people, but not for others. So Joanne, from a leadership perspective, what leadership advice might be effective for some people, but not for others? And why do you think that is?
When I got this question, I wasn't quite sure how to react to it because, leadership, I think, means different things to different people. And, we've all kind of gotten little bits of great, seen good leaders or identify, characteristics in leaders that mean something to us. And it's easy to say, things like, be a good person or be honest or, do things with integrity. Like those are all great leadership qualities. But I don't think all leadership styles or advice work for everybody. And, you can have a great leader when things are going good and a great leader of people, but all of a sudden in a crisis, that person is not necessarily going to be the best leader for, a situation of a crisis. So I don't think, all leadership styles work in every scenario. And I found this quote from an HR professor from the University of California who said, "The best advice I've been given about leadership is that it is a continuous journey of learning, growth, and self-improvement. There is no one-size-fits-all approach, as effective leadership styles can vary on the situation and the individuals you're leading." So I don't think that totally answers the question, but I think it's just kind of, you need different leaders at different times.
Yeah,
And leaders need to always kind of be changing and adapting and getting better.
I think that's fair, and the first part of that quote is almost the definition of Kaizen, which is part of our ABM, right?
Yeah.
Continuous change and improvement over time,
Yeah.
right? And yeah, the goalposts do change sometimes.
And leaders that recognize that, I think, will be better leaders.
Anything that either of you, Kirsten or Sharon, would like to add to that topic, just around leadership advice and support through careers?
No, not really. I think Joanne put it perfectly.
That was a great
If she gets a professor to help her, of course.
I kind of want to, I didn't necessarily ask either any of you to focus on this question, but there's one that maybe we could spend a minute on, which is if somebody's feeling a bit lost motivation or feels a bit stuck, what have you seen to be effective ways of unsticking them, to use a highly scientific term? What's worked in different situations that maybe you've seen, Sharon?
Well, I think having a conversation and sort of getting the person to talk to you about why they feel stuck or why they're feeling unmotivated. It might be a personal thing rather than a work thing, or if they feel that they haven't got the knowledge that they need in order to continue with the job or to get excited about it, maybe they need a change, maybe they need to do something different. And so it's important to have sort of continuous dialogue with people and to listen carefully to what it is that's causing that.
Yep.
Let me maybe add to that. I think this notion of exchange is so important, and that's why networks such as these are so important. I mean, we all struggle with very similar issues, and the issues are shockingly unchanged from 20 years ago, 25 years ago or so. And for me, it has always proven so helpful just to talk to others, and particularly other women, or also other kind of young family, young parents, young mothers, and say, oh Jesus, I'm not the only one. What a relief. I mean, already seeing I'm not the only one struggling with this. And again, women tend to be sometimes very hard on them, and seeing there are others who struggle with the same issues and sharing and exchanging some things, how to deal with it. Also kind of sharing your impressions about people. Kind of, as I said before, women often tend to blame themselves, but saying, okay, there's another person who had the same issue with this kind of person that I'm struggling with, it's always so helpful. And I think the more you are progressing in the ranks, don't be fooled and think you have to be the immaculate leader who cannot kind of show her real self to the others. I've always seen it as good to express your weaknesses, talk openly about it. Kind of, it's so much better than trying to solve everything for yourself. So, and then in the end, as Sharon also put it, sometimes there are these situations where there is simply not a good fit. Then be daring to change. Kind of, I've seen some recent statistics, kind of also that women tend to stick longer than men in a situation where they are not fully comfortable. And then on the other hand, there are some incredible kind of salary increases also involved with changing. So be this daring, which I said before, be daring also. If a situation is really unsustainable, then change it. You can. Of course you should stay with ATS.
But I also think being stuck sometimes is just normal. So I when talking to my kids and that a much younger generation, sometimes I feel like they think that every day has to be perfect, and every day they're going to come to the job and it's going to be great, and that's just not the way life is. Relationships have issues, and you have good ups and downs, and people have ups and downs and days, and sometimes your job is not going to be great, and there's a project that you don't like, or there's somebody you have to work with that you don't really get along with, and sometimes you are stuck, and all the communication and all that stuff is very healthy and very normal, but sometimes just sticking it through an uncomfortable situation gets you to a point where people recognize how either good you are at your job, or then you can get recognized for something maybe better in the future. So I don't necessarily think stuck is always a good thing. And also change change could be very positive as well. So I would say that, being stuck isn't always as negative as it appears, and sometimes you just gotta like work it out or wait it out.
I'm even in like kind of fighting through some of those harder things can actually kind of give development opportunities that you might not know are there, right? And I think the other thing is we sometimes get into our annual cycle. I mean, we do our performance reviews, which we need to do. We have our goal discussions, which we need to do. We talk about development plans, but that kind of constant communication is also really important to making sure we're understanding that, people have good days and bad days, and it's over time what the performance looks like. So, and how we can support each other. But is there anything else that any of you would like to add in terms of what you've seen at ATS and in your work in the board? Anything, I know we talked at the beginning about some of the things that are unique to ATS, but before we go to Q&A, anything, maybe I'll just kind of go in order here. Oh, sorry.
I'm the new guy.
Anything else on the entire conversation of mentorship, leadership, supporting each other that you think you want to leave people with before we go to Q&A?
Well, I would say, I think you have a lot of formal programs in place, which lots of other places don't have, and I think that is great. And I do, encourage everyone here just to work on the informal, and because I think that supplements all the formal stuff, and the formal programs should not supplant your day-to-day interactions and your own thinking about yourself and your career and issues that you're facing, and asking for feedback between the formal cycles is important.
Mm-hmm. Good, thanks. Kirsten?
I would encourage you to make best use of the global opportunities that ATS offers. And me being kind of European by heart and having worked and lived in so many different countries, I think ATS offers unique opportunities by being a truly global company. And now I know this might not be relevant for each one of you, but think about kind of for the opportunities that you have, because we're in so many interesting segments and so interesting businesses, and also have a really interesting international opportunity. And I think this is such a great opportunity for growth and personal development that many companies who are just Canadian companies or just Italian companies or just German companies don't offer. So think about it, whether you have some opportunity here also for working globally in a different country, in a very different business. I think that is a unique opportunity that ATS offers. I
would say, just to, what I love about ATS and what's so great here, it's the tone at the top. And I think I mentioned it earlier that, from Andrew, from the board and all the way down, there's a focus on, on people. And I just think that you're like fortunate to be part of a company that has that value system. So
that's great. Thank you. I really want to thank the steering committee for organizing this day. I would like to thank our board members for joining us. So I hope you've all at least taken one thing away from this conversation that you can take back to your day-to-day and share with your colleagues and your team members. I really do appreciate everyone joining us today and taking the time out of your busy schedules. There's a lot going on, but it's been a great opportunity for all of us to come together and do this.